Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It's Saturday morning, it's about 8:30 and we've got a beautiful start to the day, but the only problem is we have got some strong winds blowing a gale down here, so I'm really glad that we brought this new mic. So I'm hoping you are going to be able to hear me over the top of some of these strong winds. Now, although it looks like a beautiful start to the day with the sun shining and the birds are singing, it does look like we're due a little bit of rain this afternoon. So I have got a few jobs that I really want to get done before that starts to set in. Now, the main job that I want to get done is sort out the grass paths. They're probably about 1/2 foot in length at the moment, and I really want to give them a real good mow and a real good trim down. So we're going to do that today, and then hopefully tomorrow when we come back down, we can give it another good mowing, because I find when you do it the first time, especially after winter, you don't get all of the grass. So yeah, we're going to do a bit of a hack back today, and then we'll neaten it up tomorrow when we pop down here. Another little job that I really must get done today is plant out those onion sets. So if you remember, we did plant them out back in September, October time, but they all seem to have disappeared, whether it's the birds coming down and pecking them, or whether it's slugs, snails, or even a bit of frost. I'm not too sure, but we've got plenty more sets to sow. So that is one job that we really must get ticked off the list today. Having a little look around the plot, we've got loads of signs of spring, but we've also got plenty of weeds that are starting to grow. So I just want to try and focus on a few of the beds and get in there and give them a real good weed. And then I have just had a little look into the carrot bed, and it doesn't seem that any of the carrots that we sowed a couple of weeks ago have started to germinate. So I think we might sow a couple of more rows of the carrots out in the beds. And then finally, I've got all of the plants over in Hospital Corner, and it's getting to the time of year where I really need to be planting them up into their forever home so that they can get their roots down into that soil and really start to take off. So we're going to have a little sort out in the wildlife area towards the back of the shed, give that a little bit of a weed and see if we can plant some of those up today. As always, there will be some other little bits and bobs along the way, but first of all, I'm going to make myself a quick cup of coffee and then we can get neaten in these grass paths. So come on guys. As you can see, the grass is quite long at the moment, so what we want to do is we want to give this a real good cut back. Now I have got just a push lawnmower, so that should do the trick fine, and then we have got the strimmer. Now it only normally lasts about half an hour, so we will see how far we get today with trimming all of this grass. So we've managed to do the grass path. The only problem is my lawnmower seems to have broken. So we'll try and give this a fix a little bit later on. If not, it is my birthday soon, so I might just treat myself to one of those wireless lawnmowers. So down in these 3 beds, this is where I planted the onion sets. We planted them back in September, October time, and to begin with, they came up beautifully with the lovely lime green shoots, but after a few months, they started to disappear. We've got a few that are left in here, but yeah, quite a few have disappeared over the last 2-3 months. Now, I know from the comments below, a lot of you have had birds pecking at them, but I don't think that's the case for these guys. I think it's due to some of the really wet weather that we had, and it just rotted them out. So these onions can be planted in autumn. They are autumn planting, so they're absolutely fine with the cold weather and the frost that we get. But I do think we had an awful lot of rain, and that did rot out some of those sets. So all we're going to do today is we're going to give this a real good weed over, and then we're going to start planting some of the sets back out. Now these are spring planting sets, so they should do absolutely fine, and it won't be too long before they start to take off. I think we've got Pink Panther and also Stuttgart. So yes, let's give this area a really good weed first, and then we'll get planting. So whilst we give these a bit of a weed, I am just going to dig over the soil ever so slightly, just to make it a little bit easier for when we start to plant those sets. Now, if the ground is too compact, then you might damage the little basil plate, which is where the roots are going to form from your little onion set. So yes, just give it a little dig over, just to loosen that soil ever so slightly for when you start planting the onions in. We've got all sorts of weeds growing in here. What I do find is that the milk thistle tends to be the first to start growing, and they've got really long tap roots. So you really want to try and be getting as much of that root up as possible, and then just try and get as many of these little seedlings before they start growing into massive weeds. Oh, and look, we've got a little parsnip down here. We'll get this guy out. He don't belong in the onion bed. Right, so we've given that a good old weed and a bit of a dig over, and I can actually now see we've got quite a few onions still in here. So I've left them in, and hopefully they will start to take off. So now we're going to plant out some of these onion sets. So I'm going to try and keep to the same lines that I've got already and just plant in between the spaces that I've got. So we want to be planting them just below the soil level, so not too deep at all. And we want to be planting them about 5 inches apart, so they've got plenty of space to spread their roots and really start to swell up. So yeah, we're just going to plant in between the ones that we've already got, and hopefully we'll have enough to fill up both of these beds. So when planting out your onions, it's really important that you get them the right way up. So you'll notice that the top of the onion has got a little tiny tassel, and I call it its nightcap because that's the top of its head. So you want that to be just above the soil level, just sticking out. And then on the other end, we've got what's called the basil plate. And you might see already some little straw-like roots starting to form. And that's the tip that you want to be sinking into the ground. Now that's why we gave it a bit of a dig over, so that when we push the onion sets in, we're not damaging that basil plate, because you want as many roots to be forming from the bottom of your set as possible. Now if you do plant them the wrong way, they're not going to grow very well at all. So yeah, do keep your eye out and make sure that you're planting them with the basil plate in the ground first. Some of you might remember this little area. Back in the autumn time, the plan was to make this a nature area, but also a little seating area. But the problem that I've got is that this is my neighbours just here. So the plan is to build a bit of a screen along here just to make it a little bit more private. So we've got some bamboo there, but I have got a climbing rose that I'm planning to plant up today so that that can start running along that trellis and just making this area a little bit more private. And then we can think about buying a little seat to have round here. But yeah, we want to plant all of this bank up with lots of shrubs and lots of flowers. So the plan today is to give it a little bit of a weed over, and then we can start planting some of the shrubs and flowers that we've got from Hospital Corner. given it all a good old weed over, and now we can think about planting some of these plants in. So a lot of these plants are actually from the hospital corner, so they're all plants that we got back in autumn time really cheaply because they were discounted, and then I've looked after them throughout autumn and winter, and now it's spring, we really must get these in the ground. But we have got all sorts over here. We've got some dogwood, we've got some climbing roses, we've got some buddleia, and we've even got the corkscrew hazel, which is quite cool. So yeah, let's plant these up and I'll take you through them one by one. So we're going to start off with the corkscrew hazel. This is a beautiful plant and it reminds me of something that you'd probably find in Harry Potter, maybe Lord of the Rings. It just looks so magical with all the twists and the turns and the knots that you get in this wood. So I think I'm going to pop it down here because the plan is to have a seat just along this shed, and I think a plant like this should be nearer the front of the border, something tangible that you can touch, because it is just so unique. I worry if I put it towards the back of a border, it's going to get a little bit lost and you're not going to see the unique sort of knots and twists and turns that you get in this beautiful plant. So yeah, we're just going to dig a hole and we're going to stick it down in this corner. Now, when you're planting out your new trees or your new shrubs, you really want to be making sure that you're planting them at exactly the same level as what they are in the pot. So it's always a good idea just to give it a little practice run in the pot, just to make sure that that hole is definitely deep enough. And this is perfect. So we're just going to get this out of the pot and then we'll give it a good firm into its new home. And with all of these plants, we're going to be giving them a real good drink. Now your soil might already be wet, but I would always recommend giving your plants a really good drink just to help settle all of that soil around the roots of your new plant. And it will just help the plant settle in a little bit. Next up, we've got the dogwood, also known as a cornus, and in the winter time they have these beautiful bright stems. You can get reds, burgundies, yellows, but here we've got a lime green. Now these can get quite big, but they're a bit like a buddleia in that if you chop them really hard back, they'll give off lots of beautiful new shoots, and the more you do that, the more vivid those colours are going to be, especially in the autumn and the winter time. But throughout the summer, they have lots of beautiful leaves and some little dainty white flowers as well. So the plan is just to plant it up here, and this will get quite big and give us a bit of privacy over on this side. So again, we're just going to dig a hole, plant this up to the same soil level, and then we'll give it a good old water as well. So this here is a climbing rose. It's from Knot Cuts and it's called Golden Showers. Definitely heard of better rose names before, but it's a yellow rose, and I'm just hoping that it's going to create a little bit of colour over in this corner. We've already got a couple of bamboo plants to create a little bit of height and a bit of a screen, but the plan is to have this growing up over the trellis, and then the yellow will just create a little bit of colour as well. Now with all of these plants, if you want it to be really special, you could put a little bit of feed down at the bottom of the hole along with some compost just to help them get going. But I know that the soil around here is full of nutrients and it's full of worms, so I don't really need to do it. So we're just going to dig a hole and get this little guy planted as well. So I think after we've planted this guy, we're going to call it a day because it has started to rain. We've also had a couple of hailstorms come over. But this here, we have got a buddleia, also known as a butterfly bush, because come summertime when this is out in bloom, it'll be full of butterflies, bees, wasps, all sort of pollinators absolutely adore this plant. And these do get quite big, but the great thing is that you can prune them hard, really hard back, and they will just give you lots of new flowers next year. If you do not keep on top of the pruning, what you'll find is they'll get a little bit leggy and the blooms will be right at the top of the plant rather than all over it. So yes, it is a good idea just to keep cutting these back year on year. But what we're going to do is we'll just dig a little hole and get this little guy planted up. So that is all we've got time for today, folks. It's getting a little bit too windy down here. It seems to be getting worse throughout the day, and I am hoping that you've been able to hear me above the wind with this new microphone. But we'll find out when we get home and edit this video. But don't worry, I will be back down here tomorrow with another little adventure down on the plot, because there's a few jobs that I really wanted to get done. So I must sow some carrots. We didn't get round to that today, so we'll do a few rows of those tomorrow. And then the rhubarb. We seem to have so much of it in there, so I want to try and harvest some of that that. The thing about the rhubarb is that the sunlight is what turns the stalks that beautiful pink purpley colour, and at the moment, because there is so much there, they're all going to come up green. It still tastes beautiful, tastes exactly the same, but I would like to try and get some of those pink colours, especially when it comes to making my rhubarb jam. And as always, there'll be some other little bits and bobs along the way, so don't worry, I will be back down here tomorrow. But in the meantime, guys, I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you down here for another adventure on the plot. So take care, guys. I'll see you later. Bye bye.